Room 44, Book 1, The Institute. Chapter 1, St. Vincent Hospital. Letter dated October 3rd, 1993, to Kaylin Moore. Dear Mr. Moore, I'm writing you under due diligence that your next task to visit the Mental Institute St. Vincent Hospital is of the utmost importance. I've heard of your credentials, Mr. Moore. I'd like to say I am most impressed. To come across as a detective with such a sharp mind, but doubling that with a background as a doctor, I must admit, I believe you are the perfect person to take part in an inspection of St. Vincent. I've heard of stories of St. Vincent's authority for many a decade. The hospital has as much of a name for itself as the participants have themselves. Within the last week, I've spent an astute amount of time researching the Institute and covering details of the state's past history. Did you know that before St. Vincent operated as a secure prison for the mentally unwell, it was instead a quasi-science experiment factory? I certainly didn't know of this information and must admit, the more I discover, the more I start to believe the stories to be of potential red claws. I digress. Stories of this magnitude, although intriguing, can't possibly be true. Right? Make your way into St. Vincent, Kaylin. Report back to me on how the Institute is operating. Don't filter out the minor details. I need to know of everything. If what I hear is true, well then immediate eradication of the Institute is unfortunately in order. You know what to do. Do the right thing. Sincerely, Dr. Craver Janalis, third operator of the Third Eye Incorporates. Letter dated October 5th, 1993, to Dr. Craver Janalis. Dear Mr. Janalis, thank you for this amazing opportunity. Work has been sparse in the last couple of weeks, and I've struggled to find an opportunity for further advancement. I had a small chuckle reading your letter, and I'm thankful for your kind words. Despite my credentials, the area where I live doesn't have much in store for a traveling doctor. I should stand correct you as well. My background as an investigator goes back 10 years. However, my current occupation is that of a doctor. I hope this won't cause too much confusion, but I feel that it is important that I preface this message with my background first, so that expectations won't be disappointed. I know that in my application I put that most of my experience comes from an investigation background, which is true, but I'm more focused on medical care now. I'm willing to go to whatever task you need me to take. I've already got out of my way to book a ticket for Broadbent. Matter of fact, I'm sitting on the train my way up there now while I write you this message. Further investigation on Broadbent would be of much appreciation. What do you want me to do while there? Do you want me to write you letters inscribing the details of the establishment, or would you rather I spoke of the people who live there? Either way, the pay is great, and I'm grateful to have this experience. Personally, I've never been to a mental hospital before, and I must admit, I'm a little nervous to come across the type of people who live there now. I read up on the Institute's past on a Wikipedia page and was very intrigued. Your previous message talked of rumors that involved the institution, and I could not find anything along those lines online. However, I did read that the Institute has been around for as long as you say it has, and has much valued importance. I'll write you back in the next week, and I will make my way over to the Institute. For now, I'm going to be checking in at a hotel known as the Marriott Hotel in London. Sincerely, Mr. Moore. Letter dated October 8th, 1993, to Kaylin Moore. Dear Mr. Moore, thank you for your outright honesty. I must say, though, I'm rather disappointed to hear that your resume was a small hoax. Either way, you're there now, and I hope that the information you can retain can be of utmost importance to me and my established colleagues. You're working for us now, Mr. Moore, so you probably have questions. Ones like, what is the Third Eye Incorporates? Why do they care about a random institute situated in London? Or alternatively, how can I get paid even more? If your third option caught your eye, well, I'm writing to the right person. All you have to do is stay near the Institute and visit it every day. I want to hear something new every day. The Institute is highly regarded, and so you will very likely not be allowed to enter, much less get all the way inside. Don't let this stop you. Send me reports back each day. There is something of value in that institute that my corporation has need of. Tell me everything, Kramer. If they kick you out of the institute on Monday, come back on Tuesday. If they won't let you in, bribe them. Talk to them. Do whatever. Just give me a full report of every building in that institute and mapped out as well. Sincerely, Dr. Craver Janalis, third operator of the Third Eye Incorporates. Letter dated October 9th, 1993, to Dr. Craver Janalis. Dear Dr. Craver, I apologize for the misunderstanding. Either way, I'm here now, and I will say it's only been a day. I have so much to say. Hopefully the next little bit can make up for my mistake. I've been booked into the Marriott Hotel for the last 4 days now, and each day I feel my sanity wither away. Let me take you back to the first day that I arrived in London. The night of the 5th, slightly after I sent you my first letter, I checked in my bags at the Marriott Hotel and explored for a little bit. I was excited to see this institute that I had been reading about online, and so I booked a bus ticket up to St. Vincent. At this point, it was quite late in the night, and so I knew there was no way I was going to make it to the institute on time before it closed. Either way, I just wanted to get a gaze at the institute and see what it looked like. It's a long walk up to the institute, and it borders on 2 river creeks that spread across the bridge gate. Walking up the path to the institute, the building came into view, very similar to that of a castle. Multiple trees revolved around the front and massive large gates on the side entrances and front entrances. However, no gate on the back. This was a little alarming, as I could imagine an inmate at the end of the institute trying to escape. Either way, I pressed forward. I expected the institute to look more like a hospital, but it much more resembled that of a castle, to be honest. My vision of the castle at night reminded me of a Dungeons and Dragons campaign I had run as a young kid. At that time, I was obsessed with vampires, and I pictured an ancient vampire sitting atop their castle, withering away. Something similar to that of Dracula. As I moved around to the front office, I noticed that despite the massive gates on the sides and front, there was a small entrance door that seemed unlocked. I read your previous messages, and I knew that you want as much detail as possible, and so I will admit to the fact that I might have decided to trespass that night, just to get information, of course. I walked in through the front gates, and gently closed the door behind me. At this point, my nerves were going a little bit. I have to admit, there was a weird feeling about this place. I couldn't tell whether or not it was the General Institute itself, or the fact that it was pitch black, maybe even both coupled together. Either way, I stepped forward past the gate and immediately heard a loud yet quiet sound, almost like a screaming sound. The sound was so intoxicating and deeply pleasing at night that I decided to move back towards the door. However, I did manage to get a peek in at one of the windows. A light was on in the building, and so I could just barely make out the shape of a goldfish tank in the window. Why was there a goldfish tank in the window? I had no clue. Either way, the sound was getting to be too much, and I decided to leave the institute ground and go back to the Marriott Hotel. On my way out, I noticed that the door I came through had previously been locked that night. It looked as if someone had attempted to smash the lock. I had done so to such an avail that despite the lock not being smashed to bits, it was fulcrumed enough open to let the door shimmy open. Near the lock was a keycard. I couldn't see what was on the keycard at the time due to how dark it was, but I could make out the shape of the card near the lock. I pulled out my flashlight at this point and decided to look over the card. It looked like it was previously owned by a security guard at this institute. Before I could go to put it away, I noticed something eerily weird about the card. The person on the card's face looked identical to mine. I've heard of stories of doppelgangers and met people in my time who looked very much like the others I have been either acquainted with or friends with. However, there is the occasional time I come across someone who looks like the spitting image of another person. I don't believe in destiny or anything like that. I've had my fair share of friends who have twin siblings living in other places near them. However, I've never come across someone who looked identical to myself. As it is, I have dyed red hair and a complexion that is much different compared to how I looked when I was younger. Even if I found someone who looked like myself, there was a much greater chance that they would look like how I looked when I was younger. Basic, short hair, blonde. These are the easy things to imitate, but having the same hair color that is clearly dyed, the same mustache, it seemed preposterous to me at the time. Do you want to know the worst part? Something about their face was nice to look at. It seemed a little bit leaner, a little bit more attractive, and just better in general. Either way, I grabbed the card and got out of St. Vincent as quick as possible. I checked myself back into the Marriott Hotel that night and slept like a baby. On the morning of the 6th, I woke up bright and early and retracted my step. This time, while I walked up the steep path to St. Vincent, I wondered why the previous night it had been so easy for myself to get into the premises. Was there a reason why that door had been smashed open? Why did that card just appear near the door? I had so many questions. I made my way around to the front gates again. Quickly, I noticed that the door was slightly ajar. This was surprising, as it means that the security behind St. Vincent just wasn't up to par with my expectations. "Stop!" An old lady said in front of me as I moved towards the doors. She was wearing a brown trench coat and bad curlers, and her hair still dangling to the hair. "Identification, please, sir." At this point, Craver, I must admit, I was very confused. Why was an old lady operating as a security guard at one of the biggest mental hospitals in London? Not to mention to the fact that if I had come from a violent disposition, I could merely break open the door and kick the lady to the side. But you know me, Craver. I come from a medical background. It would look bad, even ruin my personal image if I did damage to an old lady. Due to this, I decided to pull out the identification I found the previous night. I passed it to her. She inspected the identification and looked puzzled. I could almost literally see the cogs in her brain spin as she put one and one together. She drawed the card close up to my face and glanced back and forth. Looks close enough to me. You're free to come in. This was good enough for me. I entered the premises and had officially made it into St. Vincent. At this point, I was carrying myself under a false identity, but either way, if I can make my way into the building, well, that's good enough for me. It was much brighter out during the day, and I had high hopes of getting into the institute. This quickly proven to be of naivety. Although the first door was easy to get into, the actual door into the institute was locked shut, and no matter how many times I knocked on it, nothing seemed to happen. I'm sure someone is inside that building. Matter of fact, it was almost as if I could hear a humming sound coming from the door. Despite this, the door was fully closed. I spent most of the day wandering around, looking in through the windows to see if I could see anything or find any spot that could help me get into the building. But nothing, Craver. Most of the windows were either jail celled up or had massive goldfish bowls cutting off the entrance to the building. After a couple of hours searching, I gave up, due to how annoying the situation was and how hot it was outside. I walked back down the steep path, feeling rather defeated, and took my bus back to the Marriott Hotel. While staying there, it has been one of the few calming things in my life. Did you know that the hotel offers a full sauna and pool outside of your room, and they are both situated in a massive rainforest area? It's quite calming, and after such a long day right outside of St. Vincent, I'll admit, I took most of the night off and decided to relax at the spa and contemplate ways I could get into the institute. Don't worry, Dr. Craver. I'm even more invested now than I was on the first night. I'm going to make it into the institute and uncover the secrets behind the hospital. The day of the 7th came by, and this day just didn't go the way I wanted it to. The same process happened when I arrived at St. Vincent. The old lady at the front checked my security card and nearly said the same exact things verbatim that she did yesterday, almost as if she was some kind of robot. I was let back into the premises, but could not find any way to get through the front door. My patience was running thin, and I attempted to climb part of St. Vincent. Needless to say, I fell and hurt myself. I took the bus back to Marriott Hotel that night and felt even more defeated than the previous night. I like to say that my confidence from last night was still there, but I could feel it waning. I'm unsure of how I will get into St. Vincent. That was at least till yesterday came along. I woke up yesterday, the day of the 8th, and packed myself a quick breakfast and brought my bag with me. But I realized about halfway there that I had forgotten something critical, my wallet. I felt like such an idiot at this point. The last 2 days had gone so bad that I couldn't believe things could get worse. I resolved to just adventure around the gates and see if I could find anything of a noteworthy importance. Who knows? Maybe the old grandma has left a key around somewhere that I could find and use to open the front door. There was nothing. I stumbled across the old lady at the front gate. Stop! Yet again, she was reiterating the same thing she said yesterday, and going back before that, the day before. Identification, please, sir. At this point, for some reason, I scrambled for my identification, and then realized I didn't have it. Sorry, miss. I forgot it at home today. Not a problem, sir. Well then, you will be needing this today if you forget your identification. The old lady handed me a key. A key? I've never wanted to hug someone more. I took the key from her and jumped towards the door. Stop! Identification, sir. At this point, I realized I didn't have the ID I needed to get in, and so I retreated back. Be seeing you, sir. I took the bus back last night and drafted up this letter the morning after. I've got a strong feeling that I will get into the institute today, Dr. Craver. What will I see in the first building? I will let you know soon. Sincerely, Kaylin Moore. Letter dated October 10th, 1993, to Kaylin Moore. Dear Mr. Moore, that was quite the read. Thank you for the detail. I'm glad you finally managed to find a way to get into St. Vincent Asylum. Please report back to me with further details as to what exists inside of the first building, and make sure to stay quiet around George at the front counter. He doesn't like to be disturbed, but in all honesty, you might have to do so in order to make it into the first room. Sincerely, Dr. Craver Journalisys, third operator of the Third Eye Incorporates. End of Chapter 1.